Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be reviewing Twins, a small box card game from designer Reiner Knizia and publisher Oink Games. In Twins, you are playing cards that I think are gangsters. You're trying to defeat other gangsters. It's a card game. Let's go to the table, I'll show you what it's about. We'll come back here and I'll tell you what I think. All right, here we see a sample setup of Twins for a 3-player game, which is the smallest end of the player count here. This is a game that goes from 3 to 6 players, and it's a relatively simple card game. I'll just explain the basics of how it goes, and we will go from there. So it is a game made up of a 60-card deck, and there are cards from 1 to 10 in 6 different colors. So let me just grab a couple of these cards out of this deck to kind of show you some of the different characteristics. So there's kind of 3 main things you're looking at here. You're looking at the number of the card, you're looking at the color of the card, and you're looking at what's called the characteristic, which is the top and bottom. It's either going to be a black strip or a white strip here or a black strip here. So those are the main 3 characteristics. Is going to be, again, the color of the card, the characteristic of the card being white or black, and the number of the card being anywhere from 1 to 10. All right? At the beginning of the game, everybody is dealt 8 cards, and they are dealt, given the starting number of, I think they call them cash points, okay? So you got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Everyone starts with the same amount. The game is going to play through a series of rounds, all right? And depending upon what round you're in and the number of players, there's going to be particular things that are going to occur, all right? So at the beginning of every round, whoever is first, let's say this player is first, they're going to look at their starting hand, all right? They're going to kind of evaluate what they have, and then they're going to decide at this point, this is the only time you can do this at the very beginning of a game, and by game I mean kind of a full set of 4 rounds. You're going to play multiple games. That's going to be a little confusing, but that's the terminology. At the beginning of a game, you can choose to either buy 1 or 2 criminals from the deck. If you pay 1, you can gain 1 criminal. If you pay 3, you can gain 2. So let me just say for this player, we go ahead and pay 3, and you get 2 more that you can add to your deck. All right? What you're going to do at that point, then the other players in turn order would decide if they're going to keep their starting hand or if they're going to add either 1 or 2 criminals to it. What you're trying to do is play out 2 cards simultaneously face down, all right? And there is a order of strength, okay? On the lowest end of the strength scale are what are called singles. These are cards that have nothing in common. Their colors are different, their numbers are different. Next from that would be colors. So if you have the same color but different numbers, that would beat the same 2 cards that have different colors. Next up is pairs, which are cards that have the same number, so the color of the card doesn't matter. They have the same number but different characteristics. One is a black 10, one is a white 10. At the strongest end of the scale are twins. That means they have the same color characteristic and the same number, all right? And depending upon what round you're in, again, something is going to happen. In a 3-player game, what we're looking at here is that the lowest one, the person that has the worst hand, has to pay 2 cash points to the bank. So let's just for the sake of funsies, I'm going to shuffle these up. Those have already been shuffled. I'm just going to do all of these randomly without actually choosing them, just so we can kind of evaluate what happens here. All right? So we would do that and we would flip them face up. All right, well, it didn't work out that any of them even had the same color. So let me just try something. I was hoping I can get let's just say instead we had this going on. All right, so we have no twins because we have different numbers all across the board there. We don't have any pairs because they're all different numbers. So the next thing we would evaluate would be colors. This player would win because they have two of the same color. But now what we're looking for is the lowest one. So these are both singles. So then what you would do is you would add up the sum of the two numbers, and whoever has the highest would be the winner of that. So between these two players, this player has a higher sum. This player would be the lowest one. They would have to pay 2 cash points into the middle of the table, and you would continue from there. On the second round, what you're going to do is whoever has the highest hand is going to get 3 cash points out of the middle there. In the third round, the lowest one has to pay 1 cash point and then is out. They can't win that fourth round. They're out of the round at that game, or out of the game at that point. And then in the fourth round, the highest one gets whatever is left, okay? And you continue to do this. That would be the beginning of a new quote-unquote game at that point, where you would then shuffle the cards, re-deal out 8, and you would also have that choice at the beginning to either buy 1 or 2 criminals to add to your hand. The game is going to end when one player is at a point where they have to pay something to the bank but don't have the funds to do so. At that point, you play through the end of all 4 of the rounds, and whoever has the most cash points left is going to be the winner of Twins. All right, let's head back over and I'll let you know what I think. All right, well, there's Twins. As you can see, a relatively simple card game and not a whole lot of theme there. I don't think that it was a game that was going for a lot of theme, and not a lot was achieved. So first thing I want to do is talk about a couple of benchmarks. These are some high-level ideas that I think about when I'm assessing the positives and negatives of a game. The first thing is setup and tear down, and wow, I mean, this is a small little card game. There's not much to it. You really just shuffle up the cards, give everybody a player aid, deal out 8, and you're good to go. A little bit of money that you distribute at the beginning. Perfectly acceptable. What you're looking for in a card game, you can get up and play it in minutes, maybe less than a minute. The other thing I like to talk about are rules, and this is something that it has some negatives. Now, Oink Games is a Japanese publisher that throughout the years has gotten more and more popular in the North American market. And I feel like the quality of their rule books have gotten steadily better as the years have gone on. Twins is not a new game. This has been out for a number of years, and I had some issues with the rule book. I felt like there were potentially some translation issues that made some of the wording unclear, a bit ambiguous. There was some terminology that was confusing because it goes against what some of the shorthand that we as gamers have fallen back on. I'm talking specifically about using the terminology of game and round. You know, there are 4 rounds in each game, but you play multiple games in the game. So that can be a little bit confusing. There's also a bit of a flow chart that is employed in the rules, and Oink Games have done this a number of times. In some games it works better than others. Twins, there was some confusion. Got it figured out, and it's not a terribly difficult game as you saw, but there's a little bit of ambiguity in the rules that made it harder than it needed to be. The next thing I want to talk about is art and components. First, what I liked, and then what didn't work as well for me. The money and the cards are perfectly good quality. The cardboard money is good, thick, no problems there. The cards seem to be of nice quality, good thickness, nice coating on them, no problems there. And the player aids also, I think, work well and are absolutely essential in the game. If you didn't have player aids, the game would be just more trouble than it's worth. However, it has some very unattractive graphic design, and also not only unattractive graphic design, but design that works against the usability of the game, because there are 3 kind of main aspects that you need to concentrate on in the cards that I showed you in the overview. You've got that background color, you've got that characteristic stripe, which is either going to be white or black, and then you've got the numbers. The fact that you're using those things to determine the strengths of the hands is not really intuitive. It could be difficult, and the graphic design does not really aid the player in any real way. If anything, it gets in the way. So, overall game impressions. First, I'll talk about what I liked, and then the things that did not work as well for me. My favorite part of Twins, the favorite part of the design, is the strategy around staging the cards that you are dealt. That's an interesting decision. You're dealt those 8 cards. How am I going to play these cards in such a way that I am utilizing them to the best of their ability? Because it's not always going to be where you want to come out right away and play your best hand. It's not always going to be that you want to wait until the last hand where you get everything that's left in the pot. Sometimes you have to look at what you've got and go, okay, I've only got one pair of cards here that I feel like will guarantee me to not get wiped out in that third stage. If I save that for the third stage, then do I have cards that are good enough to win everything in the middle? Do I care? Do I really want to try to just get those 3 coins in the second stage and then assume that I'm out for the rest of the game, pay 1 coin and be out? That's an interesting decision. On the other side, it's about the only decision you're really going to make in the game. Between that staging, and do I buy 1 or 2 criminals at the beginning of the game, of the multiple games within the game, those really, to me, are really the only 2 decisions that you're making. Everything else is relatively obvious as to what you're going to do. You're not really reacting to what other players are doing because you have no idea. It's all face down simultaneously revealing. And there's so many cards in the deck that you're not going to really be able to keep track of, well, these cards were played. I think there's more likely chance than not that they've got this card and I've got that card. There's really none of that. Pretty obvious decisions beyond how you stage your cards and do I buy more criminals or not. Also, I feel like, and I mentioned this a little bit in the art and components, it's a non-intuitive flow. The way that the power of these hands work is just, it's not intuitive, and the game doesn't do enough to kind of help you through that process. You're kind of on your own. You just have to kind of keep looking. Okay, I remember, yeah, the strongest are going to be the twins, the same color strip and the same number. Okay, then it's the same number but different color strips. Okay. But then if you tie, there's tiebreakers for each of these. It's just not intuitive. It's a little more work than it needs to be for as simple of a game as it is. And then finally, I feel like it can overstay its welcome a bit. Now, you could really choose to end it whenever you want. Technically, the game ends when somebody has to pay money out of the pool and cannot do so. Then everyone finishes that game and you count up the money and whoever has the most wins. If you do that, the game can be a little long, again, depending upon player count. So, a couple of cool little things, a couple of little twists off of card games that you maybe have seen before, but a number of things that just don't work for me. And so overall, I'm going to be giving Twins a 5 out of 10. I just can't quite recommend it. A little bit too much work for what it is. Graphic design that works against it. Just not enough there. All right, well, that's it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower headquarters.